Hello and welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, the ultimate resource for HR insights and guidance that will empower both seasoned business professionals and eager job seekers. I'm HR Kyle, your host. I'm excited to embark on this journey with you. In each episode, we'll delve into the intricacies of HR management, uncovering strategies that can transform the way you approach talent acquisition, employee engagement, and workplace dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned HR pro navigating the ever-evolving landscape of human resources or a job seeker striving to land your dream position, this podcast is your compass. Our mission is simple: to provide you with actionable knowledge, expert interviews, and inspiring stories that will help you thrive in the world of HR. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to take your HR game to the next level. Welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, where HR meets success. Hello and welcome to another edition of the HR Kyle podcast. I'm your host, HR Kyle, and I'm glad you're tuning in today. We've got another exciting, informative episode for you today. In our first segment, we delve into the crucial topic of managing your employees' mental health as a supervisor. Then in segment 2, we have a very special guest sharing valuable insights from her work in career services. But first, let's take a quick break. Stay tuned for a wealth of HR knowledge. Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HR Kyle. HR Kyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HR Kyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HR Kyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HR Kyle and unlock success today. Visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HR Kyle, unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business. Welcome back, listeners, to the HR Kyle podcast in segment 1. In this segment, we're focusing on a vital aspect of workplace well-being. Today, we'll be providing guidance for supervisors in managing their employees' mental health. All of this based upon the fact that to be an effective, successful leader, you must foster a supportive and healthy work environment. Let's talk about supporting employee mental health as a supervisor. And as I tell you with every presentation or every talk that you're either leading or a part of, please understand the reason why. Know the reason why you're having that. And today, this is an easy one. So why are we having this discussion? Well, here's some research for you to chew on. 84% of workers surveyed experienced at least one mental health challenge over the past year. And that's research from 2022 from Lyra Health. But it doesn't stop there. The biggest impact on mental health, now listen to me here. This is from UKG, the Workforce Institute there. The biggest impact to overall mental health is your job. 60% of respondents said their job will have the biggest impact on their overall mental health. But it doesn't stop there, and this is where supervisors come in. Managers impact their employees' mental health more significantly than their doctors, their therapist, and at the same level as their partner. So you as supervisor have as much influence over your employees' mental health as their partner, their spouse, their girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever that partner is, or whoever that is. You as supervisor have a greater influence. So that's why we're having that discussion today. One, the vast majority of us have had a mental health issue that we've had to deal with, one that's significant. We already say our jobs have the greatest influence, and at our jobs and overall in our lives, it's that supervisor. So again, that's why we're here today. So let's talk about the workplace impact that we can have by influencing either positively or negatively employees' mental health. So here's a Gallup poll for you. and it's based upon a 5-point Likert scale. Employees reporting fair or poor mental health were 5 times, so 5 times more missed work days than employees who said their mental health was good, very good, or excellent. AFLAC put out a workplace report that said 50% of employees say their performance is impacted by personal mental health. Between you and I wonder if that number is not a little bit low, but we'll go with 50. Of those employees, 77% decline in productivity. That's how much their productivity declined as a result of these mental health issues. So let's put some good news to this, right? Oxford University did a study in the last couple of years. Quote unquote, happy workers, so workers reporting that they're happy, experienced a 13% increase in productivity. So again, we're talking real numbers here. Imagine hitting your bottom line with a 13% increase just from having happy workers. Now, we're all recognizing that mental health in general is becoming a significant workplace issue to the point that OSHA, so the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, they rate mental health in the workplace as significant of a concern as they do slips, trips, and falls. So they're saying that mental health in the workplace is just as significant, needs and deserves just as much attention as slips, trips, and falls. So again, one more positive spin on this. World Health Organization. Investment in mental health. For every $1 invested, organizations experience a $4 return on that investment. So again, those are real dollars that we're talking about. Bottom line, mental health in the workplace is an issue. It's a serious one. It's worth investing in, and those investments lead to positive outcomes for the individual as well as the organization. So let's talk about this even a little bit further. So I bring this topic up to supervisors, and so often they'll say, gosh, I don't know if I'm dealing with this in the workplace right now. You are. You absolutely are. Here's what it looks like. Employees that cry at work. The employee that seems visibly tired all the time. The employee that's shying away from contact. They tend to keep to themselves. Person works through breaks, so they don't take a break. They don't take their lunch. They're falling in the extremes relative to time off. This is a person that typically maybe doesn't take a lot of time off. All of a sudden they are, or they usually take time off and now they're not. They seem to have concentration or memory lapses. They're overly sensitive. They lack energy. They're overall socially isolating. So normally the group gets together after work on Friday. All of a sudden that person's not coming anymore. And they're also missing deadlines. What you're looking for here as a supervisor is changes in behavior. So if this person typically interacted a lot and typically had a lot of energy and typically was upbeat and typically didn't take a lot of time off and so on and so forth, all of a sudden you're seeing a change in behavior, I can assure you there is an issue that they are dealing with at work, at home, or both that's impacting them. I can also assure you that their productivity as a result of that is absolutely taking a hit. Here's what creates those mental health issues in the workplace. I think we all know the ones that can be created from home life. We're focusing on the workplace. Employees who have an underuse of their skills or are underskilled. So in other words, they're capable of doing so much more, but they're just not provided the opportunity to do so, or they're in a role where they simply do not have the skills to at a minimum, deliver minimal performance. Underuse of skills or underskilled. 2, an excessive workload. Now, I don't think I need to tell you what that means. That means there's not enough time in the day for that person to complete the work that they need to, and that's expected. Here's another big one. I think a lot of us can relate to this. Lack of control over your job design or your workload. So you've got a supervisor that just simply dumps more and more work onto you. You have no input on it. You can't impact the deadlines. The work just continues to pile up. You're not entitled to have an opinion about how that work gets completed. That causes issues. Here's another one. Unsafe or poor working conditions. Well, I don't know about you, but if I'm working at a place that's unsafe or it's just an unhealthy work environment, that is absolutely going to affect my mental health. Limited support from colleagues and supervisors. This is a big one. We all like to be part of something, part of a team, part of a group, part of a fraternity, whatever that is. But when we feel like we're one among many, that absolutely affects our mental health. Here's another one: discrimination and exclusion. Again, I hope I don't have to describe to this audience what discrimination is. I hope I don't have to describe what exclusion is. But those absolutely have a profound effect on an individual's mental health. Unclear job role. I've talked to supervisors before that have said, oh, we don't like to do job descriptions here because we want to be flexible. Well, here's a news flash. That gives your employee a lot of instability. It creates a very unstable environment. They don't know what they're responsible for, what the expectations are. They have no understanding, or there's no forethought into what might be coming next. That affects their mental health. Under or over promotion. Again, we've seen this before too. Someone that should have gotten the job and they were passed over, or someone that got the job and really wasn't qualified for that position. Both of those circumstances create mental health issues. I've talked with more than a few employees who have been over promoted, and they're fully stressed out because they simply do not have the skills and experience necessary to perform the job at expectations. But at that point, they're stuck in that role because they don't want to let anyone down. And here's the final one: conflicting demands between work and home. I've told so many supervisors, no employee, including you, walks through the door at work and leaves all their troubles behind. If only it were that easy. So we've got the demands at home. Maybe we need to be home at a certain time, and we have children that we need to drop off at school or pick up from school and what have you. Those demands follow us throughout our workday, and vice versa. There's no getting away from those. There's not that nice separation that we wish we all had between work and home. Those type of conflicts create mental health issues. And you know who can have the biggest impact on that? Rhetorical question, because I know you can't answer. You as supervisor. Each and every one of those you can impact. If we had more time today, we could go into that more in depth, but like I tell you every time, if you have questions, if you want to talk about these topics more, including this one, feel free to reach out to me at hrkyle.com and we can set some time up. So what can you do as a supervisor? Here's a couple of things. One, check in on your employees. Ask how it's going, but don't do what I call the drive-by. I think we've all seen these. The supervisor that makes the rounds in the morning or the afternoon or the evening, and hey, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? They don't really care about the answer. They're just kind of making the rounds to check in. They're not really wondering how you're doing. They're doing a drive-by. You need to have some dialogue. You as supervisor need to be aware of your own mental health. For one, you're setting an example. Two, it impacts your relationships and how you interact with others. And quite honestly, if you're not monitoring your own, you become very blind to others' mental health issues. Talk in meetings about the importance of mental health, but you got to walk the walk. If in those meetings you're talking about the need to leave work on time and take your vacations and not work over vacation, but you're not doing that, then you're setting a terrible example, because the example that you're setting is that that's not really true. You don't really mean that. Watch for the warning signs. I talked about those. Where you see those changes in behavior, ask your employee, how are you doing? I've noticed that you're doing this. You didn't used to do this. What's going on? Let's talk about it. It's okay to ask them. They want you to. You need to. Talk to your employees about their work. Don't just give them work. Ask them how it's going. Get their input. Engage them about the work that you're giving them or the things that they're working on. Ask them about their ideas. Ask them about deadlines. Ask them what they like to do and what they don't like to do. Build those relationships. And then finally, and in a later episode, we're going to talk about this one more, but foster a team culture. Some of the biggest support systems I've ever seen in the workplace or in someone's life is their work relationships. Known several employees going through divorces. Coming to work was their happy place because their friends and coworkers were there and they could help them get through those experiences. You as supervisor, you as leader, though, need to foster that team culture. Again, we can talk about that. So I'm not going to leave you empty-handed on this topic, though. There are resources available to you. Most organizations, most companies have what's known as an employee assistance program. Check at your employer, find out if you have that. You can direct your employees there, employees that are having these challenges. You can also contact the Employee Assistance Program and find out what resources they may have available to you as a supervisor to better support your employees. I would also encourage you to check out the American Institute of Stress. Very simple website to remember, stress.org. OSHA has plenty of resources out there for supervisors. Simply go to the OSHA website, which is at osha.gov, so osha.gov, and do a search on resources for supervisors. And then finally, one other source that I found to be very useful around this topic of workplace stress and mental health and so on, mind.org, so mind.org. Very good resource for you if these are issues that you're working through or you're wanting to support your employees. You've got the employee, you want to direct them to these resources. How do you do that? So what does that sound like? So I'm going to walk you through that real quick. So you've got the employee, you're talking with them, and they say, gosh, I just have a lot going on right now between home and work. It's really getting to be too much. So here's you as supervisor. I hear you. We've all been there. The company does offer a free service that might be of interest to you. It's our EAP, and they provide a list of different resources and guidance around life situations. Employee. Yeah, I don't know about that. Supervisor. Don't worry about it. You can call them about all kinds of issues. No one here will ever know, and I hear they can really help. Here's the number. And then you give them that number. You write it down on a piece of paper and you hand it to them. Employee. Okay, thank you. I'll think about it. Supervisor. Definitely. Why not? It can't hurt. That's what the conversation can, should, and does typically sound like. I've had employees that had that exact conversation with me. They've either called the number immediately after the meeting, maybe they've waited a week or a couple of weeks, but then inevitably they've called the number to get resources. That approach works. It's very non-threatening. It lets them know that you understand, which of course you do. I'm going to hit you with some final information on this topic to support what I've been saying. You make a difference by caring. So here's some data from a recent Gallup poll. Employees who strongly believe their organization cares about their well-being. So keep in mind, this is a perception. It doesn't say organizations that have given them resources, supervisors have done it. It says none of that. The employee simply has a perception that their organization cares about their well-being. Those employees are 36% more happy in their overall lives, not just their work life, but their overall life. But it gets better. Those employees are 71% less likely to report experiencing burnout either very often or always. 71%, all based upon the perception that their organization cares. You know how they get that perception? When you demonstrate that you do. You take those steps that I talked about earlier. So let's do a quick summary of what we've talked about today. Vast majority of people have some mental health issue that comes up. The biggest impact to our mental health, no matter who we are, is our job. The persons with the biggest influence on our mental health are our partner and our supervisor. They're tied. We talked about mental health having adverse effect on work productivity. We said mental health issues in the workplace have certain triggers, and we went through what some of those would look like. We said the issues are recognizable, and they are. You got to be looking for them, but they are recognizable. You, the supervisor, can have a positive impact on mental health in the workplace. We talked about that, right? We also talked about how mental health is becoming a more prominent topic in the workplace. Remember the OSHA data I gave you. And then finally, I gave you resources and guidance so you could help your employees and also help yourself. It's all been a part of this discussion today, and I'm very happy to have talked about this. This is a topic that we need to get out there. It needs to be discussed more. We need to remove the stigmas around it because these issues are happening. I've given you the data. People are suffering through mental health crises. These are your employees. You're in the best position to help them. So it's time to get this subject out into the open more and address it where it should be. That wraps up our discussion on managing mental health as a supervisor. But I want you to stay with us, okay? We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we're going to have an expert in career services sharing valuable perspectives. So don't go away.
Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HR Kyle. HR Kyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HR Kyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HR Kyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HR Kyle and unlock success today. Visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HR Kyle, unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business.
Welcome back to the HR Kyle podcast and our second segment. And I tell you every week, and it holds just as true this week as it has every other. This is my favorite segment of the show. Today, we have a very distinguished guest joining us. Her name is Laura. Laura is a seasoned career advisor from a major university in the Midwest, and she brings a wealth of expertise in career services to this discussion. She has a great story to tell, and I'm happy to have her on today. Laura, welcome to the HR Kyle podcast.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be with you today.
Wonderful. So Laura, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you said, I work in the career office at a public institution. This role actually is kind of a wonderful fit for my career journey. And it also fits really well with a lot of what I love doing day to day. So as a career advisor, I get to work with students in an exploratory fashion where we're, looking at the big picture and brainstorming and really doing some information gathering and some self-exploration. But then I also get to do that really tactical stuff too. I'm one of those weirdos who really likes to write resumes. So I spend a lot of time working with students, making resumes, making cover letters. And then, extra stuff like teaching classes and giving presentations, doing community outreach, and then, engaging with employers like yourself.
Oh, thank you very much. Great introduction. And I've told Laura this, and I'll tell her here too. If I ever had an opportunity to expand my team, Laura's the first name that comes to mind. So I'm not trying to embarrass her, but that I hold her in very high regard for her skill set, and that's why I was so happy to have her on today. So Laura, in looking at your background, your career path has been really far from linear. And it's interesting because I find this extremely common amongst our professionals, that especially the ones that I work with, but yours is even more of a special story. Tell us about where your professional career started, and ultimately the path that led you where you are today.
Yeah, this one's, I do feel like it's a doozy. Years and years of trying to hone this into like a elevator pitch. I've never been able to do it succinctly. It's just too long. I say my career basically starts in audiology. I was an audiologist, healthcare provider. Loved that work, working one-on-one with people, helping them solve their healthcare needs. Beautiful role for me. I had big plans to move all over the country, and I was out of my state. I had moved to the South, and I was going to keep going and keep going. And then I ended up back home, basically, to help with some healthcare needs in the family. So unexpected turn of events, and I really found myself unable to land work in my field. And it's crazy because I did all of the research before I entered the field to make sure it was, had a bright outlook, as they say, and I was hiring. And I just couldn't get the right work. And so I did a bunch of things. I followed the rules that I was aware of at the time and knocked on all the doors and showed up places with my resumes and networked and cold called and set up appointments. And after time passed and passed and passed, I said, okay, this isn't working. And I don't like being unemployed. So what can I do? So I was like, well, I have this healthcare background. Maybe I can work in healthcare, basically information technology. And so I pivoted. I went to a coding boot camp. I learned to code and I switched from healthcare provision to healthcare IT. And so I spent a bunch of different times in healthcare. Data was my specialty, perfecting, oncology products actually. And I worked around different tech companies, startups, Fortune 15 companies, did a bunch of different roles and loved all of that. But, with COVID came and we all had some introspection around COVID time. And I was like, I wanted to work one-on-one with people. That's why I became an audiologist and I missed that. And life's different. So let's just flip this and I want to go work with people one-on-one again. And so I had the privilege to be able to afford to do that and went back to school and I got a master's in social work and I ended up at this university working with students. And in my specific role as a career advisor, I have a focus on students who are in data and tech. So it actually worked out really fortuitously. A lot of people are like, how'd you go from healthcare to IT to career? And I'm like, well, I went from healthcare to healthcare tech to students in tech. So it makes perfect sense to me.
And that's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
Laura, thank you for sharing your story. And again, I talk to so many job seekers or people that are searching for new jobs and opportunities. For them to hear a story like yours, I think gives hope, because sometimes we follow the path that we've laid out, but more often than not, we seem to be following a path that's laid out for us. And I think you can comfortably say that that's a big part of your story.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was at the time feeling like I was failing as an audiologist because I wasn't able to find a job, like I had that goal, I had that plan. I wanted to be an audiologist and then be a director of an audiology clinic. Like that was what I had in my mind. And when it didn't work out, it was brutal. I mean, it was really hard. And I'm able to look back at it and be like, oh yeah, everything was rosy now, but it wasn't at the time. It took a lot of tears and stress and introspection and feeling really crummy and not wanting to get out of bed.
Very common story. And happily you got through that. You pushed your way through it. And I can tell you in my experience working with you, you are in your place. You are in the right place where you are meant to be. And from my view on the outside looking in, you are thriving.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Laura, pivot a little bit. Let's talk a bit about your work with students. Now, when working with students, what are some of the more common challenges they face as they navigate their career choices? And what role do you play in helping them get past those challenges?
I think one of the biggest things that surprised me in this role is how every student is so different. And the needs, while there are themes throughout them, it would be not very apt to say that like, oh, I see a lot of students who are struggling with, understanding the job market, because that's true. But the way that manifests from student to student is just so different. So when working with students, their common challenges are often they need the education, the support. They don't really know where to go for information, or they have what they think is a good deal of information and they need to get it confirmed, or maybe it's not really good information. But they're coming from all sorts of different lifestyles, all sorts of different backgrounds. And when I meet with them and I sit down with them, I have no idea what they know. But it usually turns out that it's some amount of just information gathering, whether it's about their specific field. Like, for example, I meet with so many students who are like, okay, I want to go into IT. but I don't want to be a developer. What else is there, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
such a common question. It's something I love going through with students because then I pull out my sheet of this is every job that I worked with in tech, in my world of tech, that aren't developers, and people were like, wow, that's so many jobs. So going through things like that and just understanding what information they have and what information they don't have, and then helping them bridge that gap is really takes care of so many of the different things that students need. And then doing it in a supportive way, right? I love strengths. I'm a strengths finder person. I'm a strengths focused person. I'm pro strengths all the time. And so it might sound cliche, but every student that's sitting in front of me has everything that they need. They just need to find those things. And I'm here to scaffold that, and I'm here to help them with that. Not, provide it for them, but empower them to find their own strengths and their own resources by just kind of giving them that support and that extra bit of information where it's lacking.
Or that's a beautiful summary of your work and the impact that you have. And there's a lot that can be taken away there by our listeners. And I know we're talking about students and the students that Laura works with, but I firmly believe those same lessons that she just talked about hold true for all of us, regardless of where we are in our life. Laura, one of the things that I see on my side as an employer is too often, or certainly more often than I would like, students tend to struggle with that transition between college and professional work life. And that's something that I talk to students with quite a bit. But what do you find to be effective in helping students bridge that gap between being a college student and then going out into the workplace and being productive?
What I find most impactful working with these students is often it comes down to kind of some of the stuff that you present in your podcast, and it's just the data, the content that sets them up for a greater understanding. So one of the things that we career people talk about a lot, for example, are career competencies. So the National Association of Colleges and Employers, polled a bunch of employers about some of the best qualities that they're looking for in candidates. And, they populated the common results, and we share that all the time with students. And when you can sit down with a student, you can be like, this is what employers are looking for. Some students are like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But some students are like, what? They're looking for communication? And you're like, yes. And they're like, but I have that. And you're like, yeah, absolutely, you do. Let's talk more about that. Right? So those types of things. I'm a big data person. I'm a big facts person. So the more information I can get from employers about what they're looking for, industry professionals about what they're looking for, to make sure our students have that content. I love going into the classroom. I love being invited into the classroom, and I share this information with students all the time. And it's so helpful when it comes from industry professionals, when people like you, Kyle, come to campuses and talk to our students about things. And when it comes from your mouth, it seems to be worth more. I know when it comes from my mouth, and that's great. That's fine. But getting them that information, because the first time you do anything, you don't know how to do it, right? You don't know what to expect. So just equipping them with that information. And I do think, that goes both ways too, because I think getting the message to students about what's needed for them, what the expectations are, what's common, but also working with employers to understand what what the students need to be prepared. I find myself advocating a lot for this a lot lately, because again, I do tend to focus on technology, majors and areas for profession. And we see things like the industry they'll say it's in the media, it's in different, it's on LinkedIn, it's all different places like, oh, we need more cybersecurity professionals, we need more machine learning professionals, we need more AI professionals. I'm like, that's great, that's wonderful, love those things. We want to get the students into those fields. So we have a machine learning degree and we have cybersecurity degree, and those students come to me and they say, Laura, I can't find an internship. And I sit with them, we work together, and they are absolutely correct. There are not enough machine learning internships in this country right now to equip our students and get them well prepared to be machine learning professionals. So it goes both ways. I want industry and employers to understand what the students need to be right and hit, bridge that gap. And of course, I'm constantly giving that information to the students as much as I can.
No, I'm so glad to hear that you pass it on, because that's exactly where we want you, meaning colleges, universities, to be plugged in. And ideally, you're either current with us or even a little bit ahead of the curve. The other thing that you've hit on a couple of times, and I know you pass this on to your students, just knowing you, is speaking in objective terms. So when they're talking about their experience, they're thinking from a data standpoint, because we as employers, we want proof. It's easy to say, yeah, I'm good at Excel or I'm good at this. But when they can talk to us about those subjects and provide that data, like you mentioned, that gives it truly credence, and that's a way for them to stand apart from the competition as well. So, Laura, a couple more
All day long.
questions. Oh, absolutely. A couple more questions for you. What characteristics do those students that possess that you would describe as successful in their job search?
The standard answer, I think you'll hear it a million times over. I'm going to say the soft skills. Those soft skills, the soft skills, the soft skills are just so important. And that includes what you were just talking about, right? Being able to communicate, being able to articulate, being able to be organized, being able to do all of those things. Those things are how you talk to an employer. Those things are how you sell yourself. Those things are the reaching out. All of those things I said that I was doing when I was trying to get a new audiology job, which at the time I didn't know were right. I now know as a career professional, we're absolutely right. Yay, I was doing the right thing. Still didn't get a job. But those are, it's that bit of grit, that bit of tenacity, that bit of putting yourself out there. And that includes the ones who make the appointments with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ones that come to my fairs, the ones that show up at our networking events, they're not, you don't have to be the most outspoken or charismatic person. That's not what I want to convey, but you do have to be willing to adapt and learn and hone those skills. Those students that reach out to me are like, I need to work on this, that, or the other thing. They're identifying their weaknesses and seeking means
Mm-hmm.
to fix those. So those wonderful things, those are always the students who I don't hear from. And then I see them, I'm like, why don't I hear back from you? And they're like, oh, I got the job. Great. Wonderful.
Your coaching paid off. Laura, and I'm sure that I've told you this before and told your colleagues this. I can always tell the students who have worked with you or your colleagues because they come across exactly as you've just described. And again, those are memorable in my mind. And part of interviewing and getting positions is making yourself memorable, making yourself noticeable, and the things you talked about, getting out there and taking the initiative.
It pays off really well, and I know it's uncomfortable. So I'm always encouraging students to use us for those resources, and then they get the practice. And then again, being such a strengths-based focus, it's when they leave the office, I want them to know, like, you have this ability, you're gonna do well, like you
Yep.
have it in you. And then they show up at your door and they're confident and they sound good.
Well, Laura, great discussion today. I've got one last question for you to wrap up this segment. What are a couple of things that you would pass on from your experience to this audience as they consider career options? And really, this is regardless of where they are in their adult lives.
One that I'm constantly advocating for is it boils down to use your support systems. Use what you have. and whether that's a professional network, a family, or whatever. But one of those, which a lot of people don't realize that they have, is their public university career office.
Yes.
My office and many of us support alumni for the rest of your life. So if you're doing a career change, a layoff, a negotiation for a salary increase, anything like that, that's a support system to use. So be willing to use your support system. Be a little creative. Sometimes things don't, as you talked about before, they don't go as planned. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. That doesn't mean that things are wrong. They're just going a different way. And being able to use that a little more creatively in your career trajectory, and just, knowing your own story is a bit unique. Like, getting support from everybody, having a support system and hearing their stories is great, but don't use those as like hard models. Like, well, this is what my, aunt did, and this is how she got through it, so that's going to work for me. Not everything works the same way for everybody. So use those for content, use them for information, use them for support, but give yourself some grace and understand that your own life is a little different than everyone else's.
Laura, that's wonderful. That's a perfect way to wrap up this segment. And as we close our conversation with Laura today, I want to thank her for sharing her valuable insights on career services. Laura, it's been really great having you.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here.
Very, very much so. I've really enjoyed you. Folks, that's it for today's episode of the HR Kyle podcast. Remember to subscribe for more HR wisdom. And until next time, this is HR Kyle signing off. Take care and keep living and thriving in your professional journey.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the HR Kyle podcast. We hope you found our discussion valuable and filled with insights that you can apply in your professional journey. Whether you're a business leader aiming to foster a thriving workplace or a job seeker looking to carve out your own path, remember that HR Kyle is the compass that can guide you towards success. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with your network. We're committed to being your trusted source for HR wisdom, and we look forward to having you back with us for our next episode. Remember, in the world of HR and professional growth, there's always room for progress. Be sure to visit our website at hrkyle.com. That's hrkyle.com to learn more about how we can help you meet your business and professional goals. So until next time, this is HR Kyle signing off. Stay motivated, stay informed, and keep reaching for those career goals. Music provided by bensound.com. That's bensound.com.